Thank you, Chairman. And Secretary Topper, I'd like to touch first and say thank you for instituting lean. It sounds like you're starting down that road in a way and taking a look at these things and bringing these to the legislature. I think it's a good step, and I appreciate it. Quickly, how many facilities pay the PILT, the payment in lieu of taxes, to local government? I know the state parks, that sort of thing, but do anything within DGS, do you make those types of payments?
I don't know off the top of my head. The one I'm most familiar with is the one that appears in our budget every year here for Harrisburg. But I'd have to do some research to find out if there are others.
You wouldn't mind, because it was brought up in a different question, it just something that I wanted to ask. If you could get the information to me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Major, you brought up about the troop headquarters being owned. It was one of the questions I was going to ask because I know Troop C is in my district. And I know that facility's been around for a very long time. And I look at facilities like the Army Reserve Center in Brookville, my hometown, which has been there since I was walking to school in elementary school a half century ago. It's still being utilized very effectively. And as we look at these leases and the lease situations, I'm wondering why we are not doing more of that with the troop barracks. You had mentioned about the expansions that are necessary. I know you've got increased in evidentiary storage and that sort of thing, but are we not doing long-term planning to where we know this area has to have service? And if that's the case, it's an easy justification to go ahead and buy a facility and build a facility that meets the needs and would also possibly account for some sort of expansion. Are we not doing those types of long-term projections?
We are doing those projections. The problem, like the Secretary mentioned, is there's not enough capital monies to be distributed across all 38 agencies. So Punxsutawney, a lot of our older facilities were post-World War II buildings. That's when we still housed horses out in the field. All those days are done. We do look at other state property, like we're looking at the Hamburg property that's state-owned, eventually hoping to build a building there. So we do look at resources. In Greensburg DNA, we're using piece of the 10 acres we carved out of the prison. So we are trying to reutilize other sites. The problem with us occupying an addition at a site that's already built is our facilities are built a little different than a normal doctor's office. We have hardened lobbies. They still have to be conducive to public service, but we still have to have the security because we have evidence in there, all kinds of investigations, you name it.
Weapons lockers.
Yeah, weapons lockers. So it's always a balancing act on looking at properties that we could occupy. Now, sometimes if we're not talking about a station, you're talking about undercover operations, you can do that type of thing because they're more office environments. Plus, we don't advertise those. So we do try to project out. We actually have a plan that next 30 years, I know what I want to do. Punxsutawney, unfortunately, just in this example, is not one of those problem childs that have risen to the top because there's only so much money. So we're trying to address the critical needs where we have health and safety issues. Like Wyoming is one of our babies that I can't fix that building anymore, but that's a state-owned building. We don't have enough capital monies because we're investing in a new academy in Hershey. That's our priority. Everything's a priority. I can't, but I still have to take care of my guys in Wyoming. So that was our best case to go out to lease that facility and then combine it with the Northeast Training Center. The problem is we're just jacking up the lease costs going forward. There's certain buildings that make sense to own. The Wyoming we would love to own again, but I can't wait for a capital process that may be 10, 20 years out. I got to address the needs now. So that lease, unfortunately, gives us the opportunity to do that. but the hazard is it jacks up your cost and your operating, so.
In the short term, I can understand what the way you're going about it, but perhaps since TGS is already in the process of trying to figure a way to solve that problem, perhaps we could start projecting now. And if you're giving the information to DGS and to the legislature as to what your needs are coming down the road, we can start working towards getting that budgetary language and the things that are necessary. So we can start doing things where we own facilities, we build them solidly. I'm about to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the building, the Jefferson County Courthouse, and my son was at Westminster College. That thing's been on buildings there over 100 years. Those types of, we need solid construction, and let's pay for the quality up front so that the taxpayers of the future, our children and grandchildren, aren't on the hook for shoddy workmanship in the first place, or more leases that are beneficial to somebody else. As Russ Diamond said, we're responsible for, and it's the legislature that's responsible for every dollar that goes out, because we're holding a gun to the head of every taxpayer and telling them you must pay. So we want to make sure that if we're compelling people to pay, using the force of government to compel people to pay, that it's being used wisely.